What's cute and cuddly and has long ears? Only this adorable sock rabbit. I'm Tova with Professor Pincushion, and today's tutorial is going to show how to make one yourself. Our sock rabbit will be loved by children and adults alike. With a few supplies and a large pair of socks, you can easily make your own sock rabbit and customize it for its own personality. Grab your socks and some stuffing and let's get started. Here are some of the supplies I'm going to be using in order to create my sock rabbit. I have a pair of large socks. These are the traditional red heel, so my dimensions and pattern pieces are built for this type of sock. We have 2 pattern pieces which you can download off our site. Some flannel, you need about 1/8 of a yard, really not that much, and you need some polyester stuffing, of course. You want a bag of this. Now my stuffing came with this handy stick to help kind of push the stuffing into the small areas, so that's really handy. Fabric markers, sewing gauge. So you need some ribbon. This is about 3/4 of an inch wide, and I'd say at least have a 1/2 yard of this. Embroidery floss, large pom-pom. Of course we need our sewing machine, all-purpose thread. I'm using ballpoint pins. You also need a sewing needle. And then I have 2 buttons. These are 3/4 of an inch in width, and you need 2 of those because that's going to be the eyes, and then some sewing scissors. Take one sock, flip it raw inside out, and fold it so your heel ends up in the middle of the sock like this. You're going to measure 3 inches down from the bottom of the heel going towards the top of the sock. So 3 inches, you're going to draw a line across, then you're going to draw a line in the center of that. You should have something that looks like this. With the center line, I'm going to draw 2 more lines now. So from this point, I'm going to go up 1/4 inch and draw another line, and then I'm going to go down this way 1/4 inch and draw another line right here. Then from the end, you're going to go up 1/4 inch and draw a line that goes across. The lines I created in the last step are going to be my stitch lines, so I made them into a dash line. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to stitch right down on this dash line, and then I'm going to stitch across. Then I'm going to start here, stitch down the dash line, and then go across. I'm not going to stitch on the center line, nor am I going to stitch on this line that goes across. I'm just doing a regular straight stitch on my dash line. I would recommend using a ballpoint sewing machine needle, and I'm just using all-purpose thread, and don't forget to do your back stitching. By stitching on your dash lines, you're creating your legs here. So next I'm going to take my fabric scissors and I'm going to cut down the center line, separating the 2 legs, and you're actually going to cut on the center line past this line here by 1.5 inches. Now you've separated your 2 legs, but we have this hole right here, and this is where we're going to flip our sock right side out. Grab your bag of your polyester filling, and now through the opening, you can see the whole thing is flipped right side out now, but now we're going to use the opening in order to fill the body section and fill the individual legs. So it's going to be hard in this area since this is still open, but just fill it up as much as you can. Once you have a decent amount of stuffing inside the body, you can start sewing the opening closed. Now, this is one leg here. You can see I'm still missing some stuffing. So I'm going to start sewing this area closed together. I'm going to use a slip stitch. And then once I have part of it stitched together, I can stick some more stuffing in there and try to help fill out the leg. So I'm going to do this with one leg, then I'm going to do it the other leg, and then I can start working in the center section here. So I'm going to be using a contrasting thread, so it's just all-purpose thread on my hand needle here, but you definitely want to use a matching thread. Now to do the slip stitch, and you can see I didn't even pin it closed, I'm just going to grab a little bit of this edge, and you don't want to get too close to the edge because at least with this sock here, it's pretty fragile once you get towards the edge, and you can just, your stitching will just rip through it, so you want to be a little bit in and not directly on the edge. So I have it right here coming out on the right side, and then I'm just going to grab a little bit of the other side, and very gently you're going to start pulling it together. And now I'm going to go back to the other side, grab just a little bit, and again I'm grabbing fibers that seem like they're pretty stable and they're not going to rip out, and then very gently pull it together. So I'm just basically going back and forth between the 2 edges to kind of finish creating the leg. So I'm going to do the two legs first, and then I'll show you doing the center. I've sewn most of my leg sections together and added more stuffing here. So now I'm just working in the center area here. And I'm going to start up here. You can see where the sock fibers are starting to pull apart. So I'll start a little bit above that, and you're basically going to be doing the same thing. You're going to be doing a slip stitch. So I'm just going to grab a little bit above the part where it seems to be coming apart. Get your knot in there, and then I'm going to go directly across and grab a little bit where the sock seems to be more secure, and then gently pull it. And then I'm going to go to the opposite side, grab a little bit, and then gently pull it. And you'll start to see that this section will start to come together. Now as you're sewing this section close, as you tend to get more towards the center, and if you find your legs are getting too close together like this and you want there to be a little bit more distance, tie a knot to where you're stopping, and then you're going to rethread your needle and just start sewing the edges of your legs together again. So I would sew this a little bit more, and on this leg I would sew these edges together a little bit more, and that should help separate the legs as you're moving in this direction to the back. But you just basically have to play with it until you get the look that you desire and you no longer have an opening here and all your stuffing is inside. Next, I'm going to form the head by tying a ribbon around it. Now the size of the head really depends on you. I would say from the top point you want to go down about 5 inches or so, and you're just going to grab your ribbon, you're going to pull it tight so you actually get the head, and then you're just going to tie a bow. Take your second sock and turn it inside out. From this part, you're going to measure up about 7 1/4 inches, and you're going to draw a line across. Then you're also going to draw a line to mark the center of the sock. In this case now, I'm going to go up a 1/2 inch, draw a dash line, down a 1/2 inch, draw a dash line. This is still going to go measure up a 1/4 inch and draw a dash line going across here. And that's going to be our stitch line for the arms. Just like I did with my legs, I'm going to stitch on my dash line here and then going up here and doing the same thing on this side. You're then going to get your scissors and you're going to cut on the center line, and then you're also going to cut on this line up here, separating your two arms from the rest of the sock piece. Take your arm pieces and you're going to flip them right side out and fill them with your stuffing. After you've stuffed the arms, you're going to go ahead and take these raw edges and just kind of fold them towards the center like this so we can lightly pin it to our body without having all this raw edge showing. I'm going to pin the placement of the arm to the body, and I just stick the pin straight down. It's not really secure, as I could just pull this out, but at least it keeps the arm from shifting as you're trying to sew it. The placement of the arm is about 1 inch from the neck. And then I'm just going to slip stitch the base of the arm. I'm going to go all the way around to the body. So I'm going to grab a little bit of the base of the arm here, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of the body right underneath that. And then I'm going to go back to the base of the arm and then back to the body. And I like to do this twice. So I'm going to go around the base twice, just to make sure that my arm is going to be secure and it's not going to pop off. If you don't want the arm to stick out as much, when you're stitching around the base the second time around, just push the arm down, and that way when you're at this bottom part of the arm, so near the armpit, you're grabbing the fabric that's not completely at the base, but it's a little ways up, maybe by 1/4 or 1/2 inch, and then stitching that part to the body, and that way the arm will go more in a down position. From your ear pattern piece, you're going to cut 2 out of what's left of your sock and 2 out of your flannel. Just make sure that you kind of reserve the toe section because we're going to be using that later. Pair off your ear sock pieces and your ear flannel pieces. So a flannel piece goes with a sock piece, and you're going to place them right side to right side. And I'm just showing for one ear, but you do it for the other ear as well. Then you're going to pin on this outer curved area. You don't need to do this area because we're actually going to stitch along this area next. So a 1/4 inch seam allowance around the curved edges, and don't forget to backstitch. Turn your earpieces right side out. For this, I'm going to use my little stick that came with my stuffing. And if you don't have one of these, you can just use a chopstick. So you're going to take the two sides, so the flannel and the sock, you're going to pull them apart at the end, so where it's all stitched. You're going to take your stick and you're going to put it right in the center, and then I'm going to grab the two sides a little higher up in the ear, and I'm going to pull it over the stick. And once you get to a certain point, it should come through fairly easily. And then once I have the end, I can actually remove the stick and then pull it right side out. And then I would go ahead and press your ears. Take each ear, and at the open end that we had where we turned it right side out, you're just going to tuck in the raw edge as best you can. Then you're going to pin it onto the head for placement, and go ahead and do the same slip stitch to put the ear in place. Next, I'm going to work on the eyes. So this is going to be my buttons. I just placed my buttons where I would like them to be on the head, and then I just use a fabric marker to mark it. So I'm going to be doing this right one first. My first stitch, and I'm doing this with a hand needle, is just going to be a really tiny stitch right in the middle of where I want that button to be, because I want the knot to be hidden behind my button. So there's my thread coming out of the hole of the button, and then I'm just going to go through the one on the opposite side. I'm not going to pull this really tight yet. This is so I can take another stitch and I can kind of see what I'm doing, and I'm making it a very small stitch. Now I'm going through a different hole, and this time you can actually pull it through and then go through the opposite hole here. So I would do this a few times. So let me just take another stitch. So I'm just pulling the button back so I come through a hole. Now let's say I've done this a few times. This time when I go through my head, I'm going to actually squeeze the head so I come up to where my other fabric marker is. And I'm just going to slightly pull this so my button starts to sink into the head. Now we only have one stitch, so if I go back through, just taking a very small stitch on this side, and I come up to the other side here, so I'm squeezing the head, so now the needle's coming through the button on the other side. You can see I'm starting to pull that through, and then I'm going to go through again. Now this time when I come through, I'm going to go ahead and start putting on the other button on the other side. Just pull that in like that. You can see it starting to sink in. And now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to do a few stitches on this side, and then I'm carefully going to put my needle, come back through this side and pull the thread, come back through, pull the thread, and just keep doing that until I have enough stitches that the eyes are secure and not going to go anywhere, and your eyes are kind of sinking into the head like that. I think it gives it a nice shape. Once you're done, let's say I've done enough stitches here on this other side, you're just slightly going to pull your button out of the way so you can grab some fabric underneath the button, and then you can create a loop and then tie a knot that way. From this little tiny pattern, which is the cheeks of the rabbit, I'm going to cut two of this out of the toe of my second sock. Take the two cheek pieces and you're going to pin them so they're center below the eyes. Then you're going to start hand sewing them on individually using the same slip stitch technique. And just make sure that you don't get too close to the outside edge, since the sock tends to want to just fall apart. Now I'm doing each one individually, and I've already started this one. So I started here and I've stopped about here. When you have just a little bit of an opening, you're going to grab a little bit of your stuffing and you're going to stick it inside the cheek. This is so that it pops out a little bit. And it's a small area, so you might want to use your little stick to kind of push it in there. And once it's in there, you can go ahead and finish stitching it close. And usually with the first stitch around the little cheek area, the outside looks a little rough. You can see it doesn't look nice and smooth. Go around it again So go around it 2 times or 3 times, so completely around it, and you'll find the more that you go around it, the neater it'll start looking. So I'm going to do mine at least 2 or 3 times. So once I have this one done, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Next, I'm going to be working on the nose. So I use my fabric marker to draw the shape of the nose that I would like. I'm just doing an upside down triangle. And I put some embroidery floss onto my needle here because we're going to be doing a satin stitch. I'm going to start actually right smack in the middle of my nose because I want my knot to eventually be covered by my satin stitch. And I'm coming out right at the corner of my nose here. Then I'm going to go completely on the other side. It's going to be one big long stitch. Let's move this out of the way. And come up next to my stitch, but right below it. And the stitches are gradually going to get shorter and shorter as my triangle comes to the point at the bottom. So there's my first stitch. Now I'm going to come back over. So I'm going directly underneath this side over here. And I'm just kind of using my marker as a guideline of where my stitch is coming in and out. So that way I can get more of a triangle shape. And I'm coming up right below where my thread is coming out on this side. And pull it tight. And then I'm just going to keep repeating this process until I get to the end. Once I get to the very end, I can just tie a very small knot so it's hardly even noticeable. At the end of the arms and legs, I use my fabric marker to draw these little lines in order to create the paws. And I have embroidery floss on my needle again. We're going to do a very simple stitch for this one. So I'm actually going to flip it over to the wrong side, and you can see where the sock kind of stretches apart and it creates pretty big holes here. So I'm going to go through one of the larger holes, but come up on the right side, not completely at the end, but pretty close. So you can see my needle's coming out there, but it's not at the very end of the paw. And I'm going to pull this through, and hopefully my knot, yeah, you don't see my knot in here because it went through, but it kind of got stuck on the right side. So if you need to just give a little yank so it pops through the back, go ahead and do that. Just make sure that your knot doesn't come out on the front here. So now I'm going to grab a little bit here on the end, but I'm going to go past where my first stitch is coming out. Pull that all the way through. And now I'm going to go to my first stitch and come out at the very end. These aren't very long lines, so I really only have to do about 3 stitches. Pull that through. So you can see they're coming one right after the other. So now here it is, and now I'm going to go to the second stitch. But instead of coming up past my line, I'm going to actually cheat and come over to the next one. And again, not starting at the end, but just a little ways from that. And then I'm just going to repeat the process for all of these lines that I have. The last step is turning over your bunny so we can put on his pom-pom tail. So this is just a large pom-pom that I bought at the craft store. I'm going to figure out where I want it. So it's going to be in the center here, right above the red heel part. And I'm just grabbing a little bit of my fabric so my knot sticks. And then you want to start going through the center of the pom-pom. You want to make sure you actually get the center part and you don't just get kind of the hairs on the side because then it's not going to stick. So you can see it's a fairly large stitch here. And before I pull it completely tight, I'm going to go ahead and grab another stitch. And I'm going to go through the center of the pom-pom again. So you can do this a few times before you start pulling it tight, because once you pull it tight, it makes it really hard to grab it. But you can just pull it out just a little bit and then grab some of the pom-pom. Yeah, do it about 4 times, I would say, 4 or 5 times to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. And then once it's on there, just grab a little bit of your fabric underneath the pom-pom and tie a knot. And that way it should be covered by your pom-pom. And that's it. Guess what? Our sock rabbit is done. You can get more creative by adding embellishments or whiskers to your rabbit. The only thing left to do is to give your new rabbit a name. Enjoy! New tutorials are released weekly, so please subscribe to be notified of the next release. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 200 sewing video tutorials, including our exclusive premium content. Our premium membership is only $5 a month for unlimited access and only available at ProfessorPincushion.com. Also, don't forget to download our mobile app for videos on the go. Thanks for watching.